and welcome back to my channel. My name is Leela Shamash, and this week I wanted to try the reading for my screen time challenge. It's Saturday right now as I'm starting this intro, and I'm going to start tomorrow, Sunday, based on my times from this past week. I did make, honestly, tremendous efforts to minimize my screen time this week and deleted Instagram from my phone, which did definitely contribute to bringing my screen time down significantly. So that should make it a little bit more manageable for me, though I'm still averaging like around 3 hours per day, which is disturbing. So I will have to carve that out. Okay, the TBR for this video. So first of all, I have Anibot, which has been on my radar since before it came out because of this gorgeous cover, which I am obsessed with. Basically, this is literary fiction about an AI girlfriend, and it seems deeply disturbing. Next, we have Capital is Dead by Mackenzie Wark. I have read this once before. I've wanted to read it again. Last time I got it from the New School Library. This time I bought a copy at Hive Mind. It is signed, so that is very fun. So I'm looking forward to annotating it, engaging more deeply with the text, and sort of absorbing the information more deeply. The first time I read it, I was utterly thrilled. So this book asks, Capital is dead, is this something worse? And then, potentially an answer, we have technofeudalism. So this one, as far as I understand, is economic theory, and I'm not sure like where this author stands on the political spectrum. I know Mackenzie Wark is a leftist, so it'll be interesting to see how these two books are potentially in conversation with each other. And then I have, fittingly, Log Off by Catherine. I believe this is essays on, well, the subtitle is Why Posting and Politics Almost Never Mix. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it'll be cool. And this is a new publication out from Little Puss Press, which is Casey Plett's project. And then lastly, I have On Community by Casey Plett. So basically, I'm sort of thinking the narrative of this nonfiction is like kind of understanding what the internet as we know it today is. I'm gonna look into what it would mean to log off and bring politics to the offline sphere. And then On Community, I think, is like what we can look to maybe instead of the private social media model towards real relationship and interconnectedness. And I think Anibot will help me just to sort of stay engaged in reading, because I find I always need like a good literary novel to carry me through reading more challenging content. So there is the TBR. I am looking forward to getting into it. I'll be starting my challenge tomorrow morning, and I will talk to you then. Good morning. It's Sunday, 7:30 a.m. I'm gonna start reading Log Off. Okay, hello, hi, it is Sunday afternoon. I have an hour and 20 minutes left on my timer for today, so I managed to read for like over an hour and a half this morning. So I read the intro to Log Off, and so far I'm really liking it and resonating with the message. I had a couple points of disagreement with the author. Like, I personally would argue that #MeToo and the Occupy movement have had a deep and lasting positive effect at the level of consciousness raising, which is very useful to ongoing organizing. But like I said, I'm really resonating with the overall message, which I guess I would summarize as like private social media platforms function to demobilize us while tricking us into thinking that we are accomplishing gains in activism. and is, I guess, encouraging us to reevaluate the function of social media in relationship to organizing. Then I read the preface to Technofeudalism, and I liked recognizing the Marxian idea that capitalism destroyed itself. And then I was very interested when on page 11 of the preface he writes, "Real power today resides not with the owners of traditional capital, such as machinery, buildings, railway and phone networks, industrial robots, but rather a new class of feudal overlord, the owners of cloud capital." And so that made me really want to go back to Capital is Dead and see how each of the theories proposed in these texts relate to each other. And indeed, on page 3 of Capital is Dead, Wark writes, "There is still a landlord class that owns the land under our feet, and a capitalist class that owns the factories. But now there's another kind of ruling class, one that instead owns the vector along which information is gathered and used." So these are very similar observations. And Capital is Dead was published in 2019, while Technofeudalism was published in 2023. I also just fucking love Mackenzie Wark's writing so much. Like, opening with a Kathy Acker quote and then the line, "Which punk rock goddess are you?" Yes, like I just loved my leftist theory served with punk rock goddess energy. Also, I noticed when she says everything is tracked and monitored and turned into information, like I'm literally doing this with my reading right now, so I need to touch grass, and I am going out now, so I will probably read Annie Bot on the train. I just watched ContraPoints' video on AI while I was getting ready to get in the mood for this, so I will report back later. Hi, I am back home. I have like 45 minutes left on my timer, and honestly, I am so tired. But I did read some Annie Bot on the train, and little note, I always listen to pink noise 10 hours when I'm reading on the train, and I loved noticing the fact that the cover image of the playlist Pink Noise 10 Hours matches the beautiful cover of this book. That was just like so satisfying. Okay, so thoughts on the book. Initially, I felt physically sick. I was like, oh my God, just like the concept of like a man designing this robot to meet his needs in this way, which is just like so objectifying and demeaning to women, which is like making me feel sick. But very quickly, the like intelligent feminism within the writing started kicking in, and I was like, okay, yes. And actually, I found that this robot girlfriend's point of view was reminding me of my own experience with comphet, compulsory heterosexuality, like when I was trying to act straight and trying to date men, and I was like performing what I had learned was the role of girlfriend, basically based on like media and porn, and also just like the housewife training that a lot of girls go through under patriarchy. Like that's what I was reading in this robot's narration. And that's really interesting because not only is she programmed to act like a sex doll and a live-in maid, she also knows to be attuned emotionally to her owner and to like calculate her behavior to be the most pleasing to him. Like there was this one moment that really stood out to me where she's like, but he doesn't like it when I act like I have to do it. So it's like she knows to sort of like be relaxed and act like she's choosing to do what he tells her, even though she doesn't actually have a choice, which I found really interesting. And then the other thing I noted was that the names, like in this story, Stella is the generic name for all of the like sex robots that this company has created, and Abigail is the generic name for their cleaning robots. And that system just kind of reminds me of The Handmaid's Tale. So I guess we're sort of like in that feminist literary tradition here. Like I said, I have like 45 minutes left on my timer. I'll probably just like read in bed before I go to sleep, and I probably won't update again tonight because my human girlfriend will be home from work and I'll want to be present with her. If I don't finish my time for today, I'll add it to tomorrow's time, but I like really don't want to do that. So I will try to finish it tonight. And my reading time for tomorrow, based on my screen time from last week, like last Monday, is 2 hours and 27 minutes. So that's a bit less than today. And I will check in with you tomorrow. Hi. It is the next day, Monday, and I did finish my time last night. I read Annie Bot in bed. I got to what feels like the catalyst of the story. Annie Bot was kind of pushed out of her role of obedience to her owner and learned that she might be able to study her own programming and presumably intervene and affect it. So that is interesting, and I'm finding it to be like very well written and immersive and exciting. My time for today, based on last week's screen time, is 2 hours and 27 minutes. And I've actually already read a fair bit this morning. I've read for about 2 hours. I have like 33 minutes left on my timer. I mostly read log off. I read like the first chapter after the introduction and I'm appreciating it. It feels like hyper contemporary. This was published in 2024. And I feel like it's kind of helping me process just like the events of the past few months. It's like late January 2025 right now. She's basically elaborating her argument. Like in this chapter, she makes the point that on private social media, users are the product and the generators of profit. So it doesn't really make sense to use private social media as a platform to resist the power of private social media. Like, despite this sense that can occur that's like the solution to the problem of this platform is to spend more time on the platform, to use the platform to challenge itself. But like that doesn't really make sense, because no matter what you're doing on a privately owned social media platform, like you are just adding to its profit. So the only way to actually take power away from these companies and their owners is to leave the platforms, like despite the fact that they create a false sense of community. I did also read a tiny bit more of technofeudalism. He's basically explaining historical materialism, and he said something about Zeus that I liked. He writes, Zeus would have no choice, he had foretold, but to one day destroy a humanity incapable of restraining its own technologically induced power. And I feel like that's right. Like, I don't personally believe in Zeus, but I resonate with that sentiment more from a perspective of like the goddess of the earth will like have to destroy like what I see as like capitalist patriarchy, or like the men who perpetuate it, if we as humans aren't able to stop like exploiting nature in the name of capital. So I liked that. I'm super tired. I have a little bit more time now, so I think I'm gonna actually try to like just knock out the rest of my reading, and I will talk to you later. We did it. In this next part, she's getting into what I would describe as like the conditions of lateral cancel culture, like people attacking each other instead of their oppressor. And I appreciate that analysis. I would say like the book itself is written in the context of chronic onlineness in a way that like the vocabulary does make me want to go outside. I wish I was scrolling on my phone right now. Hello. It is Tuesday afternoon, and my screen time, reading time for today is 3 hours and 23 minutes, which was my longest screen time of last week. I read for about a half hour this morning, so my timer is currently at like 2:52. I am getting into technofeudalism. I read a bit more this morning. I'm engaged now. Also, this author grew up under fascist dictatorship in Greece, which is very interesting. I want to prioritize this one today because it is due back at the library. So I think I'm actually going to go to the Rose reading room right now and try to get in some quality reading. Hi. So I have like 45 minutes left on my time. I mostly read technofeudalism. I don't have that much more to say. I did take note of a few things. So this author identifies as a libertarian Marxist. I don't really know what that means, but I think I felt the libertarian part. I think I sensed that in his criticism of the Great Society program, which I also don't know that much about, but I'm interested to learn more. I was mostly reading like his history of capitalism culminating in the manipulation and commodification of attention. He talked a bit about feudalism and the enclosures. I was interested in him bringing up the quote, "People find it easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism." Mackenzie Wark is actually addressing kind of the same thing at the beginning of Capital is Dead right now, which just really has me connected with the idea of like, is there no alternative, as Mark Fisher wrote in Capitalist Realism, and basically just the mandate to believe that a better world is possible. I was thinking about that also as the author was talking about the golden age of American capitalism in the 20th century, which I have heard the recently inaugurated President of the United States talking about kind of wanting to go back to. And it just seems extremely evident to me that capitalism is not working, and climate crisis makes it extremely clear that we cannot go back. And on a social level, if we could go back, that would not be desirable or good for most people. That is, anyone who isn't part of the ruling class of rich white men. And just really like the only option, as I see it, is to imagine and create a better future. I did read a little more Annie Bot on the train. The dude got a second robot, an Abigail, which is like the cleaner robot, called Delta. And basically, I just hope that these two fembots like join forces and rebel against him, like from a feminist perspective, but we will see. Hi, I have like 12 minutes left on my timer, but I wanted to come on and update because I ended up reading Capital is Dead on the train, and oh my god, this book is just so good, and Mackenzie Wark is so funny. Like, I wanted to share with you some of the brilliant stuff she wrote about Amazon. It sells a product called Echo, which you put in your home somewhere so it can spy on you with its 7 directional microphones. Alexa, an artificial intelligence whose objective is to learn your habits, needs, and desires. Like, just the deadpan delivery of these statements kills me. I fucking love it so much. And then, let's say you are a user who wants a book. You say, "Alexa, order me a copy of Capital by Karl Marx." I'm dead. Okay, honestly, that's all I wanted to say. But seriously, you should buy this book from your local independent bookstore. I'm also just so obsessed that Mackenzie Wark has published this critical theory as well as like her memoir, Reverse Cowgirl. I just love her aesthetic and mind so much, and I think everyone should read her books. Okay, I'm like really confident I'm gonna finish my time, so I'll let you know, and whatever. Hi. It's the next day. I finished my time last night. I am reading Technofeudalism right now. Oh yeah, my time for today is 2 hours and 52 minutes. And look what he writes in the acknowledgements. One book from which I drew much courage that I was not wrong to believe that something more fundamental was in play and that capitalism itself was in question is Mackenzie Wark's 2019 exquisite Capital is Dead, Is This Something Worse? From Verso. He says, "I cannot recommend it too strongly." I feel like that's just perfect. Okay, I read a bit more and I feel like Varoufakis like just lacks some depth of understanding of social issues. Like, he's talking about the 60s right now, and he writes, "The greater the capacity of the technostructure to stir the passions, the greater the void within when they were served. To fill this void, young people felt in their bones the need to break with the established order, to rebel without a well-defined cause, to proclaim their moral outrage at the technostructure's ways. And I'm like, bro, white supremacy and patriarchy. Okay, hi, hello. It is Wednesday evening. I have like 20 minutes left on my timer for today. And so some updates. I will say for technofeudalism is that he does provide really powerful insight into the oppression of workers, like despite me earlier saying like the depth of understanding. He explains how the ruling class intentionally keeps labor cheap by denying workers' rights, union busting, etc., and how that is absolutely not accidental, as well as how the ruling class exploits working people through loans like mortgages, etc. So I appreciate that very much. He also started talking about neoliberalism and describes it as an ideology used to basically like obfuscate the cruelties of capitalism. Interesting. And I got up to the cloud capital section, which made me want to review Capital is Dead. And something I loved was on page 18. Wark talks about Marx and his closest comrades changed the language and style of the progressive movements of their time. And I think that also speaks to the project of this book, which I love. So I'll probably finish my time by reading Annie Bot because I'm tired. And I'm at a point with that one where like she went to a tech appointment, like a tune-up, and the woman working at like this tech company just seemed so unfazed by the concept of Stellas like servicing men and being these like conventionally attractive fembots, but it was extremely creepy and eerie to me. And she's like, he's a special guy, lots of real girls would be jealous after he's like, can you get her to lose 10 pounds and have bigger breasts? And I don't know if I'm supposed to feel so disturbed and creeped out, but I do. Like, I want to say to her, you sound as if you've been brainwashed by the patriarchy.
You sound as if you've been brainwashed by the patriarchy. Your whole self-worth is wrapped up in pleasing a man.
So I guess I'm curious to see how that develops. And anyway, yeah, those are my updates. I finished the time. Okay, hello, hi. It is Thursday night. I have not updated throughout the day. My time for today was like 2.5 hours again, and I have read for 2 hours, mostly, actually entirely, from technofeudalism, and so I have like a half hour left, which I plan to finish tonight. Okay, yes, so thoughts on technofeudalism. Again, I'm like feeling that the author kind of lacks critical awareness in regard to colonialism. Like when he was talking about the colonization of Australia, he described Indigenous people's resistance as like a hardship for the colonizer. Also, of land, he wrote, land is what it is, the fertile soil on which vegetables grow, animals graze, buildings are erected, and on which humans must stand before we run, sail, or reach for the sky and stars. So I just feel like it speaks to a kind of disenchanted, still sort of like exploitative relationship with the earth. So I would recommend like supplementing this reading with, as well as Capital is Dead, maybe some Angela Davis, Audre Lorde, Sylvia Federici, and Leanne Beta-Samasaki Simpson. So today I read the Cloud Capital chapter. I was really interested when he started talking about Alexa as a two-way street between our soul and the cloud, because then I was thinking, okay, cloud, this is like God language. And then we're seeing like, okay, tech billionaires playing God. This is classic Promethean hubris, which then had me start to think about Annie Bot as a sort of Frankenstein's monster, thinking about Frankenstein in the context of the Industrial Revolution, which actually is super interesting because I found out today through listening to a podcast, which I'll get to in a second, that Annie Bot has been called the Frankenstein of the digital age. Super connected. I was really interested in the Cold War history of the internet, that there was actually a government project to develop it in the context of the arms race against the Soviet Union in America. So really like the internet, which pre-privatization was a sort of free space. It's described as anarcho-syndicalist, uncommodified, a digital commons, but this was like created in the aim of protecting capitalism. So that is very interesting. I was also interested in the language of reproduction, which is introduced in this chapter. Like, didn't feel that it was being used in the same way as Caliban and the Witch, but I feel like this book is like very connected to Caliban and the Witch for me, so that's interesting. I feel like on page 90 he like basically really elucidates the thesis that if this is no longer capitalism, it's post-capitalist with historical roots remaining in feudal Europe, but whose integrity is maintained today by a futuristic dystopian type of cloud-based capital. Super interesting. Last night when I was reading Antibot, I realized, okay, I feel like the tension for me, especially after like my previous update on this book, is like, is this gonna get feminist? And so then last night that inspired me to Google like the book and see like, who is this author? Like, what is the perspective here? And I got the impression from reading like the description of a podcast that like it very much is feminist. And I listened to that today and it was spoiler free. It was her interview on the Stacks, which I would recommend. It was very interesting. And she also really gets into like the role of race in this story, which I hadn't highlighted as much, but became clear to me if you listen to the podcast is like extremely relevant. Okay, so on that podcast, Sierra Greer states point blank, Annie is an allegory for a woman in an abusive relationship. And then later on she says Annie is an allegory for modern feminism and Doug is an allegory for patriarchy. So there we have it. I'm honestly so into it now and loving it and can't wait to see how it all plays out. I finished the time. Hello, hi. It is Friday and my time for today is exactly 2 hours and 30 minutes. My timer is currently at 53:02. And so at this point in the challenge, I feel like it hasn't been very hard for me to read for around 3 hours per day. So it is clear to me at this point that I will probably not finish any of the books that I started for this challenge this week. But upon reflection, that might actually be connected to the concept of screen time because of the way that browsing the internet in its form of privatized social media affects my attention span. It's a lot easier for me to sort of jump from book to book and sustain reading in that sort of unfocused way for longer periods of focused time. Whereas if I had just like read one book at a time, I would probably have finished at least one. So that said, my updates for today. I read the first chapter of On Community this morning, and I honestly don't have many thoughts on it so far, though I would just say that I love Casey Plett. I met her at McNally Jackson when she was here signing her 10-year re-release of A Safe Girl to Love, and we were chatting and she signed it to me with like, stay with the urgency of finishing my novel, because she was talking about when she was 25 and it just felt really urgent to her to write this book, and I really related to that, and I was telling her and she signed it with that cute message. So I love Casey Plett for that reason. And then I read more Technofeudalism. And by the way, I wanted to explain what I meant when yesterday I was saying that this book is very connected to Caliban and the Witch for me. What I meant by that is that Caliban and the Witch is an account of the transition from feudalism to capitalism. It's like a social feminist telling of that historical time, specifically focusing on witch hunting and its role in the establishment of capitalist patriarchy as we know it today, which was occurring during that period of transition. So Caliban and the Witch, the transition from feudalism to capitalism. Technofeudalism, the theory of a current transition from capitalism to what Varoufakis is calling technofeudalism. So Caliban and the Witch, feudalism to capitalism, technofeudalism, capitalism to a new form of feudalism. Interesting. I honestly didn't have like many more thoughts today, except like my socialist sensibilities are a little bit activated by the author's libertarian ones. Anyway, Antibot. As I had hoped and dreamed, Annie and Delta are teaming up. It is very exciting. And last night, I was reflecting and starting to think about fembot rights and cyborg theory and Donna Haraway. And as I had been realizing, Annie is a kind of feminine Frankenstein's monster in the digital age. Hello, Shelley Jackson's early 2000s hypertext piece, Patchwork Girl, which is an interactive novel basically about the female Frankenstein's monster in the context of cyborgs, like feminist cyborg female Frankenstein's monster. I love Patchwork Girl and I love Shelley Jackson. She was my professor at the new school and I love her so much, and I loved Patchwork Girl before she was my prof. I was like in my room watching it like with candles lit, having like a magical experience. So I highly recommend that you check out Patchwork Girl. I'll link where you can access it down below, and she also has some YouTube videos talking about it, which I will also link in the description. So that was a really exciting connection to make. I feel like Annie Bot is in the legacy of Shelley Jackson's Patchwork Girl as well. So yes, as I was saying, I have like 53 minutes left on my time. I will finish that up tonight and check in with you again soon. I can't believe that we are almost at the end of the challenge. It's been a very fun ride so far. Oh my god, also I wanted to rave a little bit about the physical book of Annie Bot, because just look at that gorgeous, can you see that pink little lining? It's just such a fucking gorgeous detail, that light pink, and it feels like lingerie on a sex bot, you know? It's just so perfect. I'm obsessed and in love with this book design. Thank you. Hi, update. We are actually going to go see Companion right now. And I'm very excited because it is exploring a similar concept to Annie Bot. So I will, of course, bring this book on the train and I'll let you know how I feel about the film. Oh my god, it is after midnight and I still have like half an hour on my time. I can't believe it. I'm obviously still gonna finish it before I go to sleep, but fuck. Hello, we are home from the movie. And I think I'll tell you like my full thoughts tomorrow. I have like 18 minutes left on my timer. I'll read before I go to sleep. But right now in Annie Bot, they are biking through the woods past an abandoned asylum. And I am just totally obsessed with that imagery. Like they saw a cat and a bat, and I just love it so much. Okay, talk to you tomorrow. Okay, hello, hi. It is Saturday. I did finish my time last night, and today my screen time is 2 hours and 39 minutes. My timer is currently at like 1:59 from reading this morning. So I wanted to let you know my thoughts about Companion, and then I'll give you my reading updates. So I went into it with like a really strong awareness that it was written and directed and produced by men. So I was like honestly bracing for like the most male gazy, worst sex bot take. But going in with that mindset, my expectations were like really exceeded. There were some great twists and I really liked the ending. I really appreciated Kat's character. I felt that it was very wrong for certain characters to die. And when I was expressing that to my girlfriend, she was like, well, that is the slasher genre. So I guess like when it wasn't just like the most misogynistic, sexist thing ever, I was like, then my expectations got higher and I was like, well, why don't they subvert or revolutionize the genre? So yeah. And so like it was inclusive, but I did find it to still be like fatphobic and homophobic, like lightly. But anyway, I thought Sophie Thatcher was incredible and gorgeous. And I find it really interesting that she's ex-Mormon because I could really see parallels between sort of like patriarchal housewife indoctrination and sex bot programming. And I guess that was sort of something that I was thinking about. Like when Kat said to Iris that like the concept of sex bots just makes her feel replaceable, I was like, well, that's like the real horror here for me, is the concept that under patriarchy, certain men would want women to perform the function of a sex bot. And I don't know like how deeply the text of the film understood that, but I was able to read that, you know? For me though, like the main thing was that I just absolutely adored the visuals. Her pink outfit covered in blood in the forest, her pink outfit holding a knife. I'm just obsessed and in love. Like, I adored that. I also really liked the pink and red graphics, like the branding for the film. I was so there for that. I loved it. Okay, so Annie Bot. I'm still reading. I really want to get to the part where she gets a library card because I heard on the Stacks podcast that I listened to that there's a part where she gets a library card and she's so happy and she loves her library card. And I relate. I love my library card and I got this book from the library. So I love that and I want to get there. Currently in my reading, she is at the house of the character who is in this story functionally Dr. Frankenstein, and it's interesting. I'm not sure if this is something that the author was thinking about as well, but his house is very American patriarchy. Like there's this like military stuff. His wife is cooking meatballs. Like that just really makes me think about like the context in which we are exploring the concept of female sex robots in the structures of American culture. Because like that's something that I've really been thinking about as I've been engaging with this topic is like, I think this like fear of a robot revolution and like robots like gaining sentience and becoming murderous or insurrectionist speaks to like the ruling class's fear of resistance from oppressed and subjugated classes. So that kind of has me thinking like, well, as scientists are developing AI, like why are we conceptualizing of robots as a necessarily subjugated class? And I had never honestly considered robot rights as like something that was relevant, but reading this book and watching the film, I feel like it's really makes sense to me that robots deserve rights and require rights, because like if you are an equal citizen and you have autonomy, you're not then looking to overthrow a ruling class so as to free yourself from oppression or ownership. And I do think that this concept of ownership is really relevant to this story as well, like because she is owned by her boyfriend and her function is to serve and please him. And I do think that that does speak to the legacy of slavery, and the character, Doug, who owns Annie Bot, is racist. Like, we know that he has an ex-wife who's black, and he designed his sex bot to look like his ex-wife, but with lighter skin. So, like, that is being explored here for sure. There's also this, like, interesting element that was just introduced where this, like, Dr. Frankenstein character wants to revive his dead son who died in service to the American military, and he wants to put Annie Bot's, like, advanced consciousness into a robot of his son. But what I found interesting was that he says that once he puts this AI consciousness into the male robot, the way that the robot is treated will turn her male. So I think that's like an interesting point about gender too, that like the way that you're treated in culture creates how you are. And so like, what does it mean to be a female sex bot versus a male free citizen? Okay, so it's my last day. I have like 2 hours left of this challenge. I'm deeply aware of the irony. Like already, like when I first read Capital is Dead and logged it on Goodreads, I was like, wow. And I feel like Yanis Varoufakis would say that like I'm acting like a cloud surf right now, creating content for free for big tech or whatever, but like that's the point. That's what I wanted to explore with this reading list and with this challenge. So I hope that you're enjoying it, and I will check in later today.